ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवते उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। उमज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनच्छलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपः कदा मह्यं ददाति सुपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुः श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेशा गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमद् स्वामी नामिने नमः। ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमति भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी नामिने नमस्ते। सारस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे कम करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्येश्वरम्। हरि ओम तत्सत्। हरे कृष्णा। So happy to be back again. It's always very wonderful to discuss the Srimad Bhagavad in the association of devotees. Actually, it doesn't matter so much who is speaking and who is listening. It is equally beneficial. What matters is that the message is presented properly in disciplic succession, and all of us are absorbed in listening to that message of the Bhagavad. I'm just trying to serve as an instrument here. We are absorbed in hearing the message with the right mentality, in a mentality of humility, in a mentality of service, wanting to serve the Lord, with a mentality of gratitude, appreciating this wonderful blessing that the Lord has awarded to us. Now we are at a very, very special time in Kali Yuga, in a very special Kali Yuga that too. And we are at a very, very special time. Actually, most of us have no idea how special this time is. I don't have so much time to discuss about the special time. Maybe another day we'll discuss in it. But if you get some idea of how special it is and how special the opportunity that we all have received is, then like Prabhupada once told some of his disciples that if you actually understand your good fortune, you will faint. Because to even achieve this situation of the opportunity to hear the Bhagavad, which is explained in the true spirit of the Bhagavad, which is pure devotional service. Having given up all forms of Kaitava Dharma. That opportunity among sincere devotees is actually very, very, very rare. And that opportunity is such a great blessing because that opportunity opens the door for spiritual perfection. And we are at a very special juncture, especially for many reasons, but a couple of quick reasons. One reason is this is a very, very special day of Brahma. Because within this day of Brahma, Lord Krishna appears personally and Lord Chaitanya appears personally. Very special. Once in a day of Brahma, how many days are there in a day of Brahma? Sorry, how many Kaliyugas are there in a day of Brahma? 1000 Kaliyugas. So it happens that this is the one. And that too, we are born at a time, not just in this Kali Yuga, in this day of Brahma, we are born on earth on the same planet where only 500 years ago Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. And as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu had predicted, that a golden age where spiritual consciousness is going to spread all over the planet is just around the corner. So we may be thinking, many of us are thinking, oh, it's so bad. Kali Yuga is getting, worse and worse and worse. But the good news is that just around the corner, lot of things are going to change. And I don't know at what pace, but it may be quite rapid also. But the whole world will be forced to take up to a spiritual way of life. And amidst that, Krishna consciousness is also spread extensively far and wide. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said, Prithivite Yachyata Nagaradigram Sarvatra Prachar Hoibo Marnam. In every town and village, my name will be chanted. When my name chanted, meaning when Lord Chaitanya's name is chanted, then obviously that means the Hare Krishna Mahamantra will be chanted. Because anybody who knows Lord Chaitanya knows his instructions. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva Kevala. So this is going to happen, and we are born around this time where we have an opportunity to contribute towards being an instrument of making this a reality. So I do not know how many of you realize the profundity of the period in time that we are situated and the amazing opportunity we have both to transform ourselves, because those things which are very, very, very difficult to attain are given very, very, very easily now. And also the progress is very, very rapid. That progress which would take many, many lifetimes, you can do within years or maybe a couple of decades. So there are some very, very extraordinary blessings. And there are many, many reasons. We don't have time to discuss all of that. But I hope you can trust what I'm saying. Again, I'm not saying based on my own wisdom. I am saying this based on the predictions across scriptures, across the incarnations of the Lord himself, his great pure devotees, the acharyas, and also across the spiritual circles, in almost all spiritual circles, they have this understanding that just around the corner there is going to be a very beautiful age of spiritual consciousness, the golden age. So the clouds are going to disperse very soon, and you all have the opportunity to become the, so to say, as they say in English, the torch bearers of Krishna consciousness. to show the way to the world, basis the message of the Gita and the Bhagavad, of how one can practice and perfect one's life and help others. So we are very extremely fortunate, and all that we are doing, including what you may think as an as not so important event of on a Saturday evening, 30 odd families are coming together and discussing Bhagavad. We are unable to fathom the huge impact that even this apparently simple and apparently not so uh, extrovert, if you may want to call it, activity will bring to the whole world. Spiritual consciousness, even when exhibited, even to a small degree, I don't remember the numbers very clearly, but there has been some research in this area. And they say that the positive energy created by one soul is so powerful and so strong that it can overcome the negative energy of more than 100 people. So, to overwhelm evil, and I'm talking at the level of the whole earth, I'm not talking about just our immediate surroundings. It is not necessary that half the people have to become devotees. If 1% of the population also becomes devotees, the whole planet will be transformed. That is the power. That is the energy that those who are devotees actually create. So much more powerful. So much more powerful. Anyway, so the point that I'm trying to make is only if we appreciate how rare the gift that we are being given is, then only we will take it very seriously. Otherwise, we'll just think of it as, oh, every Saturday evening, I like to just hear some religious things, and I feel nice about it. It's my recreation. It's my spiritual recreation. If we approach it like this, we are actually, I mean, that is also good. But then we are actually missing out on a very wonderful opportunity. Just like somebody gives you a touchstone, a Chintamani jewel, and if somebody gives you and you don't know what is the value of the Chintamani jewel, and instead of using it as a Chintamani, you use it as a paperweight. You know what's a paperweight? Nowadays, people don't use paperweights, but at one time, at least around to 15, 20 years ago, it was common. There were so many paperwork, so there used to be a weight, strong weight, a glass, oftentimes a block of glass, which should be kept on paper so the paper doesn't fly away. So can a Chintamani serve as a paperweight? Of course it can. Can it be used to wash clothes and beat clothes and clean them? Of course it can. Is that what it is meant for? Is that the value that it gives? Of course not. So the opportunity that we have through the holy name, through the Bhagavad, through the association of devotees is actually so immensely great in terms of the potential that it has to actually change us and transform us. But sometimes, because of our lack of proper understanding and knowledge, we are unable to appreciate the value of the opportunity that is being given to us. So we should not be misers. We should not be deluded or misled into considering what we are doing and the opportunity that we are being presented with as something which is one of the many things that we have. In due course, the problem is many of these things are only understood as after facts. Yeah. Correct. Now we think, oh, when Lord Chaitanya was there, I so wish I was there. I would have run to him and held his lotus feet and begged for prema, him and Nityanand Prabhu. They would have easily given me. Now we think, now it's easy to think because it's an after factor. You can, in hindsight, go and say that. But when Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda were personally there, and they were actually going door to door and knocking the door, Nityananda Prabhu would knock. People would bang the door on his face and said, get lost. Sometimes when we are actually in that situation, we are actually unable to appreciate what is the gift that is being given to us. Can you imagine God coming at your door and ringing the bell to give you the highest treasure of spiritual perfection? Just by saying, yes, I want. And you think it's a scam. So you don't open the door. So this always happens when we are in the midst of such a transformation, when we are in the midst of such a extraordinary situation. Sometimes it's difficult and it's natural. Sometimes difficult to appreciate some things when we are in the midst of it. But those who are deeply contemplative and knowledgeable in the Shastras and the words of the sadhu will be able to understand and appreciate the value of the opportunity that is being given. It is truly extraordinary. It is truly a very, very, very rare event in cosmic history that such an opportunity is given to conditioned souls to extricate themselves so easily from material existence. It's almost like, you're in a jail all your life and there is one fine day, the jailer, he opens the lock, opens the bolt, and whoever wants to go out can go out. But you are so lazy that you don't even want to push the door to step out and go out. What to do? So it has been made so very easy. So as we associate with devotees, as we take to the process of Krishna consciousness, gradually we'll be able to appreciate the value of what is being given to. It's not so easy. That's why Krishna says, Manushyanam Sahasreshu in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Manushyanam Sahasreshu Kaschadhyati Siddhai. It is very difficult to find a person who's truly interested in spiritual life, and out of thousands of people who are interested in spiritual life, hardly one is able to understand me in truth, and that's why I appreciate the opportunity or the gift that is being given. In fact, so many devatas from the heavenly planets are actually taking birth on the earth because they know the value of this opportunity. And they are thinking, oh, wrong timing, I went to heaven. Bad timing, let me quickly come down and take birth on earth. So devatas are taking birth. Once Prabhupada was with some of his disciples, and one of his disciples was having a tough time getting along, and he was fighting and arguing with some of the other God brothers. And Prabhupada was trying to make him understand that no, you must cooperate and you must this. And then Prabhupada told him that, he said, you have no idea who some of these God brothers and God sisters of yours are. If I tell you who they are, you will faint. If I tell you who they are, you will faint. So this is the truth. So this is such a special opportunity that many great souls, sages, devatas, yogis, they come to this particular planet in this particular time because the Ganga of Lord Chaitanya's mercy is flowing. And one dip in that flowing Ganga of the Harinam Sankirtan can thoroughly cleanse the soul and take him back to Godhead. So quick and simple. So it's a very wonderful opportunity. And that is why when we practice this devotional service, hearing, chanting, and rendering of seva in the association of sincere devotees, like what I mentioned, we don't even know who we are surrounded by. We get an opportunity to associate and get the blessings of such great souls that we cannot even fathom. And if we are sincere, all of these things will come and be granted to us as the Lord's blessing. Because the nature of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is that he has come here to give with his eyes closed. Patra, apatra, na dekhi. He doesn't consider who is fit and who is not fit. If you are willing to take it, he is willing to give it. The problem is so many people are not even willing to take, or even if they are willing, they are not even valuing what is given. But through the association of devotees, if you become fortunate to recognize that, then actually we can go a long way by making advancement in a short lifetime, in a couple of decades, you can make an advancement which would have normally taken hundreds of lifetimes. As we advance in Krishna consciousness, we'll be able to appreciate some of these statements more deeply, more profoundly. But at least for now, we can accept them on the basis of faith in the words of the great souls. And this is very important because unless we actually understand the value of the opportunity that is being given to us, we will not be able to take it very seriously. We'll be like the washerman, the washerwoman who had a chintamani but was not knowing its value, was using it to beat the clothes and wash them. That's a story around that. I will not go into that for lack of time. By the way, today actually we're going to have a short class because I have another course that I need to go to. So the chapter, which is the 28th chapter, is actually around 40 plus verses. It's quite long. It's going to be difficult to complete it in any case. But I thought what we will do is we'll just cover the first few verses, give an overview, and then complete the chapter in the next session. So having said what I have said, I will try to cover a little bit. I'll probably speak only another 10 minutes or so today. So excuse me for that. We will end early. Then we can continue to discuss in the following class. The 28th chapter is entitled Kapila's Instructions on the Execution of Devotional Service. Now, if you recollect, the discourse given by Lord Kapila is in response to the questions that Mother Devahuti had placed before him in chapter 25. She had asked him about what is the way by which she can render devotional service in the best manner. And she also asked about Tattva Gyana, philosophical knowledge which will help in disentangling from matter. And she also asked about yoga, which is aimed at the Supreme Lord and which can award liberation. So she had also expressed desire to understand about the Ashtanga Yoga. So in this particular chapter, actually in the previous couple of chapters, the Lord has already explained about pure devotional service. The Lord has already explained about Tattva Gyan. We discussed the last two chapters where quite a bit of Tattva Gyan was discussed. This chapter is dedicated, chapter 28 is dedicated mainly towards summarizing the Ashtanga Yoga process. Ashtanga Yoga process, this particular chapter you can say is Bhakti Mishra Yoga. So it is predominantly yoga, but it is also has elements of bhakti in it. Because like we said, unless there is bhakti, yoga is not truly yoga. There must be some affinity, even though it may not have come to the point of active service and deep attachment. There must at least be a recognition of the supremacy of the Lord and ourselves as subservient. And there must be some positive affinity towards the Lord. That is an absolute minimum for any spiritual process. So Mother Devahuti wanted to understand that spiritual process which is connected to the Lord, that yoga process connected to the Lord, which can achieve, which can give liberation. So Lord Kapila is actually going to describe the yoga process, the Ashtanga yoga process, summarily in this particular chapter. And there are some very interesting sections in this chapter. He starts this chapter by first giving a summarization of the entire Ashtanga yoga process. He tells his mother, I will explain to you. If you follow this process properly, you can actually become blissful and joyful, and you can advance towards the supreme destination. And this yoga process, the word yoga is about joining, and that is why even this Ashtanga yoga process is a mechanical aid towards joining or connecting the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, we have discussed this multiple times, that Bhakti Yoga is a very natural process of linking with the Lord, and the Ashtanga Yoga process is a forced mechanical process. Of course, eventually the mechanics will lead to further purification, and gradually a bonding will develop through purification and through developing some attraction for the Lord. But the Bhakti Yogi doesn't go through such a convoluted process. He directly develops devotion for the Lord simply through the process of hearing and chanting in the association of devotees. What is the special good fortune of the Bhakta, which the Ashtanga Yogi does not have? The special good fortune that makes the Bhakta's progress so easy and joyful is his good fortune of having association of pure devotees who are involved in hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. That is why I mentioned that is the great good fortune. If that fortune we have been blessed with, then our path actually becomes so much more simpler. But for those who are not so fortunate, these other processes are there where they are taking shelter mainly of a different process, but then adding some amount of bhakti in it. So Lord Kapil actually summarizes the whole system. And I'm not going to go verse by verse. I'm going to just summarize a few parts of it. There are broadly three areas. First is the overall summarization of the process, the Ashtanga Yoga, which is essentially describing Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. 8 limbs. Ashta Anga, 8 limbs. In this order. Okay, it's not a buffet, huh? It's not a buffet. Buffet meaning not that, okay, I don't like Yama Niyama. Asana is good, some nice exercise. This dhyan meditation is too troublesome. Maybe I will pick something else from here. No, it doesn't work. This is not a buffet that you can choose. This is a sequence of steps to be followed, which leads ultimately one towards Samadhi. Samadhi means full absorption in the Lord. Samyak adhiyate asmin atma tattvam yathatmayam. When the mind is fully absorbed in the understanding of the self, and the full absorption understanding the self ultimately also means understanding the supreme self, because you cannot fully understand the self without understanding the source of the self, which is the supreme self, Paramatma, and ultimately Bhagavan. So he first gives a summarization of the 8 steps and what are the key features and the key objectives of these 8 steps. And then he elaborates into the stage of dharana by describing the Lord of Vaikuntha, of how his beautiful form is. Then it goes into the discussion of dhyan, where in detail there is a detailed description of how to meditate on each and every bodily limb of the transcendental supreme personality of God. It's a very beautiful description. So rushing through it is no fun, because this is what we want. We want absorption. And the whole purpose of this absorption is that when we are absorbed in the beauty of the Lord, what happens? We lose attraction for the things of this world. That is the natural consequence. If we are truly attracted to the Lord, then to the degree we are attracted to the Lord, to that degree we are losing attraction to the material things of this world. Those things, whether it is Sattvagun, Rajogun, Tamogun, and after that, ultimately, how this process leads to perfection. That is what Lord Kapila is going to describe. And the later part is even more interesting, but I'm just going to, over the next 5 minutes, briefly describe the Ashtanga Yoga process. And then the Dharana and Dhyan part we'll discuss next time, because it is very connected and it's about deep contemplation on the beautiful form of the Lord. Actually, it will be good next time if you read the verses and come. Those verses actually roughly begin from verse 13 onwards. Very beautiful. When we read and hear those verses, ideally our heart must be very naturally attracted and absorbed and feel enlivened by hearing about the beautiful description of the Lord. Anyway, nonetheless, so Lord Kapila starts by describing the Ashtanga Yoga process, and he says that one must first start with Yama and Niyama. Yama and Niyama are the most basic foundational building blocks of yoga. And we discussed this a few times. Yama is don'ts, Niyama is do's. So as soon as somebody wants to enter into yoga, they want to jump into dhyan. But at the entry gate are 2 doorkeepers, Yama and Niyama. You have to get past them. What does that mean? That you cannot enter the spiritual process by being whimsical or unregulated in your life. And this is true for that matter for any yoga, not just Ashtanga Yoga. These principles are applicable in all yogas. But in Ashtanga Yoga, it is all the more important because it's a mechanical process. One has to follow the recipe very, very strictly. The Bhakti process is a little different. Yes, these principles are important, but some of these principles, even if they are not very, very strict, for example, Brahmacharya, even if it is not very strict, because Bhakti is so much more powerful because of being based on direct attraction to the Lord, the Yama and Niyama are not absolutely essential in terms of all their details. Of course, the spirit is still very important. One cannot be whimsical nonetheless, but probably not as strict. But again, important to know and understand that one cannot make spiritual life by being unregulated. We have discussed this multiple times that spiritual life is about detachment from matter and attachment to the Lord. And that is why these do's and don'ts are given. Satatam smartavya vishnum vishmartavya najatuchit sarve vidhi nishedhasyu retayor evakikara. All do's and don'ts, vidhi and nished, essentially means yama and niyama of the scriptures, are ultimately to help us to always remember Krishna and never forget him. So that is the objective. If we don't follow them, what happens? It becomes very difficult to remember Krishna and it becomes very easy to forget him, which is exactly what we don't want. So, a few ground principles, even before getting into Yama and Niyama, because Yama and Niyama is directly coming into the process. Even before that, the advice of Lord Kapila is that please establish yourself in such a way in your life that your mind is peaceful and contented, because unless your mind is peaceful and contented, you cannot actually make any tangible progress in Ashtanga Yoga. And for that matter, in any yoga, but all the more in Ashtanga Yoga, because Ashtanga Yoga is a mechanical process of focusing the mind. Very important for the mind to be very peaceful and be happy and satisfied by its nature. So a few things he mentions as prerequisite. He says, whatever prescribed duties a person may have based on his guna karma, his varna and ashram, one must execute them to the best of his ability. Because when one executes one's swadharma, varnashram swadharma, one naturally becomes very peaceful and satisfied. And one should not get busy in trying to do another person's duty, because that causes disturbance. And don't hanker after too much. Whatever comes naturally after whatever endeavor you are doing, just accept it and be happy. Be satisfied based on whatever comes by the grace of the Lord. And take shelter and worship the spiritual master. Don't be attracted to those religious principles which are talking about material progress. Don't get distracted, but be attracted to the Vedanta part of the Vedas, not to the flowery words of the Vedas which are talking about heaven and material opulence and this enjoyment, that enjoyment. No. Focus on the Vedanta, the knowledge of the transcendence, and how to achieve the supreme liberation. Live your life in moderation. Don't overeat. And don't mix too much with materialistic people. Remain a bit secluded. These things are important, because if you don't follow these principles, it is going to be very hard for you to make progress, because the foundation has to be there. A strong foundation has to be there. Now, this is even before Yama and Niyama is coming. So while I said that there are two guards at the door, even to reach that door, you have to. The point is, if you do not have these things, even if you enter into Ashtanga Yoga, if your mind is not able to be peaceful, then you will still struggle to make any tangible advancement. So then Yama Niyama is given, and I think it's best we discuss this also the next time because of shortage of time. But what I will do is, I will just briefly mention to you what Yama Niyama is. Actually, if you go into that in great detail, it will take many lectures to complete this chapter. But there are a few things which are important. There are 18 things which are mentioned in this chapter over the next few verses, actually 2, 3, and 4. So one is, some of those things we already discussed. Execute your prescribed duties to the best of your ability. Avoid performing another person's duty. Be satisfied, santosh, samadhan. Worship the spiritual master. Don't get attracted to materialistic religious practices, but rather be attracted to those which lead to salvation. Eat moderately. Mita Bhuk, or of course here it is referred to as Mita Medhyadanam, and always remain in a secluded place away from materialistic association. Then Ahimsa, non-violence, Satyam, truthfulness, Asteyam, don't steal, Aparigraha or Yavad Artha Parigraha, accept and keep with you only things that you need. Otherwise, you will be distracted if you greedily try to gather too much. Brahmacharyam, celibacy, tapaha, austerity, shaucham, cleanliness, swadhyaya, study of the Vedas, purusha archanam, worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and maunam, silence. Again, silence means don't talk about materialistic things. Silence doesn't mean don't, you cannot say, oh, I have to be silent, I can't chant Prabhuji. No chanting because I have to be silent. Bhagavatam said be silent. So silence means silent about materialistic things. So this is a combination of yama and niyama. Yama are things you need to do. Sorry, yama are things to avoid, and niyama are things that you need to do. After having covered that, then he goes into describing the asana, pranayam, pratyahar, dharana, dhyan, and samadhi. What is asana? Asana is perfecting sitting position and posture, not just for health, but so that one can be able to sit and meditate for long periods of time. That is the objective. Pranayam is controlling the breath. And a few things are described about pranayam. Pranayam actually helps to purify the system and remove the doshas. Also, if there are any energy blocks in the nadis, our neural networks, the body, which oftentimes also creates psychological disturbance. It also creates diseases. So Nadi Shodhan is an important objective and is often strongly recommended for those who are in Ashtanga Yoga. Pratyahara. So pranayama is actually the breathing, right? Anulom, Vilom is there. There is Kumbhak, Purak, Rechak. Inside, hold the air, then leave it. So there are many different kinds of pranayama which should be learned properly. Otherwise, it can create problems. Then pratyahara is the process of gradually turning the senses inwards on the material object and concentrate the mind in the heart rather than letting the mind go all over. And dharana is to fix the prana vayu at a particular place. There are 6 chakras, and we'll discuss them in the next class. Shat chakra yoga. Sometimes Ashtanga yoga is also known as the Shata chakra yoga. This chakra, and Krishna explains this very briefly, refers to this Shat chakra yoga in the Bhagavad Gita also, in the 6th chapter. And here also it's being referred to the 6 chakras. So there is a reference to the chakras in the Gita and the Bhagavatam, but not huge importance is given to it. It's more important for some of these specific mechanical processes. So that's the dharana, where one fixes one's prana. Prana is the life air at a particular spot from various chakras, starting with the navel and going upwards. Dhyan is meditating on the limbs of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And samadhi is being fully absorbed without interruption or deviation. So this process is given and has to be sequentially followed. It's like going through one door to another, to another, to another. First standard, second standard, third standard. Only when one has accomplished the previous standards can one go to the subsequent ones. Unfortunately, nowadays what people want to do, they want to jump on the 7th limb. So those who don't have all this patience and all these things, and which take sometimes lifetimes to do, the simple process which Krishna has given for Kali Yuga people is simply hear and chant the glories of the Lord. If you cannot do anything else, don't worry. Just come and sit where the devotees are doing kirtan and katha and listen in a non-envious way. And after the katha is over, take some prasad and be happy. In that way, you will make advancement. Their energy will lift you up. So some of these points are described in more greater detail in the first few chapters up to verse number 12. Asana is to be able to sit in a clean place, with the back erect, in a swastik asana position. And when one practices pranayam, the mind is gradually becomes steady and the doshas are removed, so the steadiness of the mind becomes possible. And the mind becomes pure, just like gold becomes pure when it is put into the fire and fanned. That is what the Bhagavatam says. So like what we said, pranayam destroys the doshas of the body. Dharana destroys the sins. This dharana of focusing the consciousness on the various chakras destroys one's sins and sinful tendencies. Pratyahar helps one to develop detachment from material sensory association with the sense objects. And dhyan, which is active contemplation or meditation on the limbs of the Lord, is what actually frees one from the material qualities and material infection. And then the Lord Kapila goes into the description of the form of the Lord from verse 13 onwards. So that we will discuss in the next class. And it's very beautiful. I will strongly recommend if you can read verses 13 onwards all the way towards the end. It's very, very beautiful description. And this kind of meditation will help us a long way to develop attraction for the Lord and be absorbed in Him. Even if we develop even a little bit attraction for the transcendental form of the Lord, it is actually so wonderful. The transcendental form of the Lord is actually so deeply satisfying to the heart that a person whose heart becomes charmed even a little bit by the transcendental beauty of the Lord, by His name, form, qualities, pastimes, even a slight semblance of attraction for it is clearly seen to be so much more better than the highest of material pleasures. And when a devotee gets this experience, he becomes very convinced. He says, if this is what I am getting, by not even eating the dish, by smelling the dish from a distance, this is the pleasure. Right? Let's say there is a wonderful meal awaiting you. You have not reached there, but from a far distance, somehow just that smell comes. And that smell itself is so wonderful that all the other things that you wanted, you lose any interest in them. This is so wonderful. I can't just wait when I will taste this and eat this. So even the faint semblance of pure devotion is actually so attractive and so satisfying. So this is the experience that we are hankering for. And this is how true detachment comes, especially in the path of bhakti. Not just by mechanical forced abstention. Maybe that may be needed in the initial stages. But when one continues to cultivate attraction for the Lord in the association of devotees who have faith and taste, in that association, that faith and taste is gradually experienced. Even though we may not have taste, that association induces a taste in us, and that taste helps us to get a glimpse. Like the smell coming from the kitchen with the wind. And this is not just my example, this is exactly what happened with the 4 Kumaras, isn't it? Of course, it was not the smell from the kitchen, but it was smell from the wind, which was carrying the aroma of the tulsi and the flowers offered at the lotus feet of Lord Narayana Vaikuntha. They smelt it. Just that, they didn't even actively engage in the service. Just that smell made them forget everything. They lost all, what to speak of matter, they already were not interested in matter. They even lost any desire for impersonal liberation and impersonal Brahma Jyoti experience. Once they smelled the tulsi, the aroma of the tulsi and the flowers at the lotus feet of the Lord. So sometimes when we hear these things, oh, we think these are all poetic exaggerations. None of this is any poetic exaggeration. These are all perfect spiritual truths, which we cannot conceive with our material mind unless we have some experience of this phenomena. Initially, we may accept this based on faith, but gradually, as we progress in devotion, when we start getting some whiffs of that smell, we will start realizing and appreciating, and that is when we start developing strong and deeper faith, and we take deeper and stronger shelter of the process of devotional service, because we realize, oh, this is truly far out. The experience that awaits me is going to be so intense, so wonderful, so deeply fulfilling. All the things that I've been hankering for all my life materially are actually so insignificant and inconsequential in front of this. That's the realization we are hankering for. So anyway, I think I took quite some time anyways. So thank you all very much. We will continue with this chapter and we will complete it next time, Krishna willing. So thank you. I'll not take any questions today. We can keep it for later, and we'll meet again obviously on Wednesday. Continue the discussion of Bhagavad Gita, and yeah, that's about it. Thank you very much. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Thank you, Prabhu.